Sell my home as is in Wichita, Kansas. Find out what we have to say about that in today's episode. So I'm gonna get into 4 pros, 4 cons of selling your home as is. And if you stick around to the end, you'll get a special verbiage loophole that may or may not work in your favor, depending on which side of the equation you're on. So stick around for the end for that, and I'll relay that secret of a certain loophole with verbiage that comes with as is home selling. But first, before we get started, I got to do all my appropriate due diligence ahead of time. Please ask you to like, comment, subscribe, share, depending on which platform you're on. And if you would, please intentionally think about who could benefit from seeing this content, seeing this info, and having this knowledge in their wheelhouse. So I'm going to go ahead and get into selling your home as is in Wichita, Kansas. And at first, I'm going to go over the pros of that. And the pros of that is the obvious one. One, obviously you don't have to do repairs. You don't have to deal with hiring a contractor, getting things fixed, all the hassle, this and that, back and forth, which can sometimes work in your favor of, the conflict of interest, because obviously the seller wants to get it fixed as cheaply, as quickly, as easily as possible. The buyer obviously wants it to be the most quality, maybe cost more than what the seller's willing to pay, or they don't like the work that's being done. So there's all that discrepancy of what's acceptable and what's not when it comes to repairs and that kind of thing, which kind of leads into the second pro, which is no hassle. Less hassle when you don't have to deal with all the different things that we all know go on with houses as far as what needs to be fixed, what needs to be addressed. And it's such a arbitrary relative thing to buyers and sellers perspective, and there's a lot of bias that goes on there from the seller side, buyer side, when it comes time to what's expected to be fixed and what's not, and that just eliminates this piece of the equation completely. The third pro to doing as is that we've seen a lot of these as is deals tend to be cash. Doesn't say they're always cash, but they can be cash. Obviously with cash, it makes it less of a hassle, less paperwork you got to deal with. So if you don't have to deal with repairs and you don't have to deal with as much financing and paperwork, obviously that makes this whole thing a little bit more hassle-free, which is kind of like number 2. And there's the potential to be cash with all that, which leads us all to number 4, is that because there's less hassle, less inconvenience, it can be quicker depending on the situation. You can see like a 1 to 2 week close, as opposed to typically most loans or financed situations with an inspection period take 30 to 45 days to complete for all that. So it can be quicker with all that. So the pros of selling your home as is in Wichita, Kansas: no repairs, no hassle, can be cash, can be quicker. So that's kind of the 4 things we see as pros. It's not an all-inclusive list by any means, but those are 4 pros to consider. But now the cons. People want to look at, I'm just selling my home as is, and sometimes they'll take this real strong, almost asshole stance about selling the house as is. I don't want to make any repairs. I want to be just as hard-nosed as possible. And what they don't entirely realize is how much that attitude and that mindset, that demeanor is costing them money, because it makes you a lot less desirable to buy that house. You're not really appealing to cooperate with somebody, to have them come bring you a fair offer. It creates this battleground that goes on, and that would be the first con I'd see, is that people are typically going to discount their offer, knowing that that's the situation, that you're wanting to sell your home as is. You're not really starting out on an agreeable, cooperative standpoint. You're starting out on a standpoint of completely one-sided as the seller, of just saying it's as is. I'm not willing to do any repairs. Granted, if you are a buyer, think about it from their shoes. They're not going to be as agreeable to give you the asking price that you're wanting to get out of this, because you took an as-is stance right from the start with all that. And so you're going to see a discounted offer come in when you sell your home as is. And so when you think about the cost savings of selling as is compared to what you can potentially make from the deal, it actually costs you more money to sell your home as is than if you would just go to the market, have a strong negotiator that knows construction like myself, that can work out a fair deal and maybe negotiate $2,000 to $3,000 worth of work, as opposed to them discounting their offer 10, 15, 20, 25,000 off of what you're asking. You do the math, which one's more profitable on everything. The second one that goes with that, a lot of people really shy about as-is inspections. It's one of the more scary things for them, even more so than putting more cash into a house, agreeing for a higher price. You know, their biggest fear is buying a lemon, buying a turd. And if you market this as this home's being sold as is, there's the potential that you could have no offers or less offers, and that kind of defeats the purpose of listing with an agent when you're trying to generate as high of a ending purchase price as possible, and you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot when you go as is, because you're going to steer and deter a lot of people away from your listing because they're not comfortable with an as is home inspection situation. And if you got a pretty, you know, reasonable good house and a realtor that walks through and really, you know, evaluate your house pre-sale of saying, here's what you need to be concerned about, here's where you don't, you know, that is the most profitable situation that you can put yourself into when selling your home. And I get it, you don't want to make a bunch of repairs, you don't want to deal with a bunch of costs and hassle, but what you'll find is proactivity up front leads you to profit more in the long run than just being kind of lazy or lackadaisical with it, if you will. Number 3, the con with that is also the psychology. The buyer might be thinking to themselves, what's wrong with it? Why are they selling it as is? What do they know about that they're hiding or don't want to address or won't address? And so when people come to look at that as is house, they're going to be looking at it with a much finer comb, much further detail to really evaluate this thing and be like, I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know. This thing might be bad. Excuse me. So they're gonna start off with a much more negative psychology about the house. Since you're selling it as is, they might be thinking to themselves, what's wrong with it? You know, and they're already going in this negative loop of the situation to where it may or may not get you the offer that you want. Sorry about that, guys. Had to cut. Take a break from a phone call coming in. Take a break of water. So fortunately, we real estate agents are really busy. So that was the third one. They might think what's wrong with it and not offer on the property and have a negative psychology from the start. Number 4, there is still the potential for them to back out, cancel the deal. So whenever you're in an as-is situation, that can tend people to be a little more leery because if they just end up having cold feet, don't like it, what you'll find is in Kansas, the contracts are very in favor of the buyer, and the way that Kansas law writes is written in a lot of our board contracts, they're very in favor of the buyer as far as what's allowed to be done and what's not. So knowing that, how to navigate that situation is very important, that you have a quality agent that knows what they're doing there. And I need to apparently address why I can't talk today. But I'm gonna get through this, I'm not quitting. And so that's the 4 that we see are some of the biggest cons to listing your home as is that you'll get discounted offers. You may not get as many offers. People will be thinking, what's wrong with it? That should be number 3. And number 4 is there's more of a potential for buyers to back out. They're being forced to buy as is. Now, the special verbiage loophole I promised you guys I would put in here. This is where you have to be very clear and direct and succinct in the way you write these as-is situations, because they have to go on the contract. They can't just be written on the listing description. That's not enough for this to actually be pulled off and come through. And that verbiage, depending if you're a buyer or seller, you may leave this loophole open. If you're the buyer, if you're the seller, you really want to make sure you have this written in there very clearly, very succinctly. So this loophole can't be pulled on you, but you're the buyer, it is kind of a loophole you want to use. I don't know, just depends on which side of the equation on, and depends on which side you've hired me to be on as the buyer or the seller's agent for you. So that's where a good strong buyer that knows how to catch these, or a good strong agent that knows how to catch these gotchas really goes to your benefit of hiring a quality agent. So the verbiage that you have to look out for is you can't just write in there simply selling home as is. That's too vague. It doesn't cover enough of the context of what can be pulled on you on this loophole. So if you're the buyer, you want to leave this loophole open and you just write, seller agrees to sell the home as is. When you leave it that vague, it leaves the door open for this loophole that says, yes, we won't be asking for repairs, but that doesn't address anything about adjusting purchase price for repairs if you have an inspection. And if you have that as-is piece in there, you have to address the inspection period as well. You can't just say I'm selling the home as is, but then still have an inspection contingency. You have to address all of those things within the contract, or else you're leaving the door open as the seller for that loophole to get pulled on you. If you're a buyer, this can give you a little bit more peace of mind, because we can use this loophole in order to potentially get you out of the deal, or to negotiate money off. Even though we agreed to buy the house as is and we wouldn't be asking for repairs, we didn't ask for repairs, we asked for money off. And since we had the inspection period contingency still within that contract that listing agent and seller failed to remove, they left that loophole open for us to take advantage of in real estate. And at the end of the day, that might sound cold and ruthless, but that's the game we play. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you want an agent that knows how to navigate that and work for you on your behalf to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a precarious situation as a buyer. Now, if you're the seller on the other side of that and you go against my advice to sell a house as is and list it that way, and you are going to sell it as is and you're saying, I'm not making repairs or dealing with any of this, this is where you need to have the specific verbiage in that contract that says, seller will be selling the home as is, seller will make no repairs, price adjustments, or any other considerations when it comes to inspections or repair requests. Buyer understands inspection is for informational purposes only and their own benefit, to no regards to this transaction negotiation. So you have to be very clear and succinct that you're addressing all that we addressed. One, we're not going to fix anything, we're not going to adjust price or anything, and inspections are for informational purposes only and hold no contingency upon this contract performing and coming through. The other thing to address in there too is also the fact that if any repairs come up during the appraisal inspection process that the lender requires, the buyer will be agreeing to do those repairs in order to write the loan to get this deal to go through. So there's very important details like that matter in real estate, that you want your agent to really be looking out for you, that knows how to navigate and deal with these situations. But I wanted to at least give you the pros and cons of selling as is, because I know a lot of people think about selling their home as is and they don't entirely realize, the pros and the cons and the benefits of that, and that very important verbiage loophole that I was telling you about at the end there. So whether you're buying a home as is, we have some ways we can still work in your benefit. If you're selling a home as is, there's some ways we can protect your interests and what you're wanting to do there. A lot of it comes down to the agent you use, because contrary to popular belief, who you work with, who you hire matters, depending on how well they know what they're doing and how they do it. So hopefully that's helped you learn a little bit more how real estate works today in regards to selling your home as is in Wichita, Kansas. If you'd like further specific consulting on all this, on your exact situation, I'd be more than happy to help. Go ahead and shoot me a message or look me up on my website or go to my social profile. There's all kinds of ways to contact me. Pick your favorite flavor of choice and we'll go from there. Appreciate you watching. Talk to you later.